We can see you, Mike. You there? You good?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, loud and clear. So Mike's going to be talking about key considerations for new markets. Now, actually, there's a similar theme with Bruce as our final speaker. One of the things I've had a lot of feedback from leaders as they're starting to think about 2021 is how to effectively nail new markets, new verticals, new geographies. So Mike is recently, literally just joined a new company, and he's a veteran SaaS revenue leader, spending the last two decades building MarTech growth stage businesses in Europe and North America. And his most recent roles were launching two US companies, Bluecore and Monetate, here into the UK and Europe. He originally attended Queen's University in Canada, and he moved to London in 2001. So looking forward to hearing your insights. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, thanks for that introduction, James, and hello, everyone. Just to, I guess, set the picture for today, I'd probably call this presentation some tactical tips on launching in new markets. So these aren't big strategies I'm going to talk about. These are just some things that I've learned over the years, having launched 3 US businesses into the UK, a UK business back into the US, and also UK teams into Europe as well. And also in terms of context for my experience, I've typically worked with startup and growth stage companies, so sub 500 employees. Pretty much all of it's been in the MarTech space as well. So just keep that in mind as I'm going through these tips. And lastly, obviously, this is all through the lens of sales. When you're expanding into a new market, there's many other elements to consider. On the marketing side, client success, operations, HR. I could talk for hours on those other topics if you want to contact me separately, but we'll just focus on some of the sales learnings for today. So here we go. First point I want to talk about is just product market fit. It's really important that when you're launching into a new market, you don't assume that the product market fit that you have in your home market is going to translate perfectly well into the new market. You need to do some research in advance. You need to speak to some of those companies that you're going to be selling to. A great way to do that is getting some consultants involved beforehand, maybe 6 months to 12 months before you're actually planning to launch, to gather some of that intel so that when you do actually make that investment, you're very clear on how you're going to be positioning your solution and comfortable that that product market fit is there. Next, expand before you land. So I'm a big fan of acquiring a few logos before you actually put boots on the ground. It will just make the acceleration and the ramp up that much easier once you start building the team. You can have, just looking back at both Bluecore and Monetate, we had our East Coast team selling into the UK initially, which isn't ideal, but we were able to win some initial business. We also did a lot of expansion selling from our US clients. So there was plenty of opportunity to go after, to at least get some teams in the UK using our solution that we could then turn into references, which leads me to my next point, which is those early references are absolutely critical. If you're fortunate enough to get referenceable customers in the first 6 months of a new market launch, that's great. I find that they are hard to get, and they do take time because you have to sell, you have to bring on those new customers, you have to get them live, and you need a period where they're essentially happy with what they bought before they're willing to talk about it. I would suggest that going in, you very early target some companies that you might be willing to give your solution away at a heavily discounted rate, or even give it away for free for 12 months in exchange for those references. I've seen many companies do that really successfully. I've done it successfully in the past, but there has to be a very clear agreement within your leadership team that you're going to do that, and that you set that as a very specific goal. Next is just when you're going into a market, play to your strengths. Again, looking at recent experience, I worked for 2 MarTech companies that were very strong in fashion, retail, and footwear. And so when we launched into the UK, we prioritized a lot of our outreach and a lot of our marketing activity at targeting those companies. And not surprising, those were the initial logos that we actually ended up selling. Next point, think carefully about the role that you want to launch with. So you can launch in a new market very conservatively with a sales rep or multiple sales reps. You can hire a sales leader who is going to need to roll up their sleeves and get very active selling initially before they start building their sales team. Or you can bring in a GM and essentially, have that cross-functional leader coming in from day one. There's pros and cons for each of those three. It often depends on how aggressive and how quickly you want to enter the market, and also what the size of the team is likely to be within that first 6 to 12 months. If there's going to be a lot of hiring initially, it may make more sense to launch immediately with a GM. If it's going to be a more conservative approach, you may want to get salespeople on the ground first. When hiring those salespeople, I'm a big fan of hiring at least 2 in a new market. I've seen a lot of companies just put 1 sales rep in to see how they do and then build off the back of that. The issue with having 1 sales rep is you don't necessarily you don't know if their success or failure is down to that individual rep or down to this product market fit issue or something else to do with that particular market. So I like to have 2 where you can actually compare them both together and hopefully learn much faster by having 2 versus 1 in market. For those initial hires, I'm a big fan of hiring from the industry and hiring people that have a Rolodex. As the teams get bigger, I don't think you need to do that. I think you want to hire the best possible salespeople with great track records. But initially, if you're trying to launch in a new market and you're hiring people that, in my case, don't know MarTech, haven't sold into retail before, it's just going to really extend your expansion timeline. From a compensation perspective, one of the things that I've had and have put in place for others is a compensation plan in the first 6 months, which is more focused on building the fundamentals. So not so much about bookings, but more about defining your TAM, getting your key hires in place, acquiring the account and contact data, which may not exist initially when you launch, doing a thorough competitive analysis in the market, and then obviously setting up meetings and building pipeline. I think after about 6 months, you definitely want to revert to a plan that is based on bookings. But by focusing on that initially, you're building a foundation, which I think will be very useful. And if you don't do that, there's a risk of those early reps just cutting corners and chasing deals without, as I said, putting that foundation in place. The last thing I'm going to say is just the topic around finding a local advisor. This is something I've done in some cases, and in other cases I haven't, and wish that I had. And this is where you identify somebody who is usually an ex-client side individual, usually fairly senior, who is well connected in the market, that can give you insights in the market, insights into specific companies that you're targeting, can make introductions for you, and can just be a good sounding board as you're getting the business up and running. There's, in my particular market, which is retail and MarTech, there's loads of folks that will do that and can do that. But I think it's a great way to, de-risk, those first few months that are super critical and making sure that you're off to a successful start. That is pretty much it. I went through that pretty quickly, but I'm pretty sure I'm close to 7 minutes.